one of the greatest clean and jerks in USA weightlifting history.
Easy clean.
That's the one. Caden Cahoy, unbelievable. Right now, he's in the medals.
That's Caden Cahoy, USA Weightlifting's most underrated weightlifter and 2028 Olympic hopeful. And in this interview, we discuss his decision to go up a weight class.
We're gonna go to 85. When I cut down to 79, I feel pretty pretty lean. I don't think I could go at another 4, else I would be super skinny. And I'm just tired of being the skinniest one.
The lifts that he and his coach expect to hit in the lead up to the Olympics.
I want to be around 65, 215 if possible.
280, 300 is where we'd like his back squat to be.
And their competition strategy.
You said it earlier, he's a clean and jerk specialist. If we can get his snatches on par with the top 3 in the weight class, once it comes down to that clean and jerk, man, it's going to be fun to watch.
Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Last Set, Best Set podcast. I'm Coach Brian. I'm the owner of Big Ben Strength, and I've been teaching Olympic lifting for 11 years now.
And I'm Coach Calvin. I'm current captain of Lindenwood University's Olympic weightlifting program, as well as a coach through Big Ben Strength.
And today we're joined by some special guests here. We've got Caden and Chad Cahoy. Caden is a 2024 junior world champion and Olympic hopeful, and Chad is his dad and his coach and the owner of Jacksonville Strength. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are, I think, probably one of the most underrated male lifters in the world right now, and I'm blown away that nobody's interviewed you because you're pulling on world records, like at the senior world championships. And this is insane. Like, this is crazy. There's not very many American athletes that are making attempts like this. And so what I wanted to do first is let's kind of talk about how you got into weightlifting. You've actually been doing weightlifting longer than both me and Calvin have. You started in 2013. It looked like when your first competition was. Is that when you started as well?
Yeah, I started doing CrossFit when I was 8.
Okay, so you started doing CrossFit when you were 8. And did you do a weightlifting? How old were you in 2013?
9. I'm almost 22 now.
Yeah, so his first competition in 2013, he would have been 9.
So walk me through it. What were the numbers that you were putting up at 9?
It was probably like 40 kilos.
So it looks like your first competition in 2013, it looks like you totaled 40 kilos, 18 on the snatch, and 22 on the clean and jerk. And then looking at your progress from that point, it's pretty linear. Like, you go 40 at your first competition, 47 at your next one, like a month later, 66 at your next competition the next year, 69, 81, 87, 88, 104. Like, this is a pretty straight jump in progress here, which is pretty incredible. I don't think a lot of people would expect it to be quite that linear. And so I'm curious to know, like, what was your training looking like when you first started competing in weightlifting, and how is that different now?
I feel like we've always been like 5 days a week, and now it's 4 days, so not much has changed, honestly. Just kind of like the intensity and how much weight is actually on the bar.
The specification of his training, taking a look at, and when you get somebody that's as good as Caden, trying to, write a program that's going to continue to, that linear progression that you're talking about. But then 2, it's like, okay, he's already got pretty good technique, obviously for him to be putting up the numbers that he's putting up, but there are always things that we need to work on or we could get better at. So the programming, he started off 5 days a week. We pretty much been 5 days a week for the majority of his training. We went to 5 days a week, 2 days there for a little while. But that was really kind of destroying him. And you could really see him, especially as young as he was at the time. He's like 15, 16 years old and we're doing 2 a days. It's like, that's not what a typical 15, 16-year-old wants to be doing. So we talked about that, and, he wanted to start playing some other sports. So I wanted to kind of cut it back and allow him to kind of be a kid. So made some modifications, and then I want to say it's been about a year and a half maybe that we have actually dialed it back to 4 days a week.
What was the reasoning for dialing it back to 4 days a week? Because I think a lot of people may be surprised that as you're getting more advanced, you're pulling back on the frequency a little bit.
So that's the thing, is like, it's all about athlete specificity and what's good for the athlete, and then in multiple ways, not just physically, but also mentally, right? So again, the trick in programming for a coach is always, how can we do with what is going to keep them motivated? They're not gonna be injured. They're gonna be able to train more often, or we're gonna be able to keep the intensity up better with 4 days a week, with specified movements in those 4 days. Then we are going to be able to, like, 5 days a week for 2.5 hour training sessions, or 6 days a week even. So it's really kind of all about, but there, in arguing that, there's also athletes that prefer to do a 6 day a week training block, right? So it's really kind of what it boils down to the athlete. And it's just one of those things where I felt Caden found what works really, really well for him to be sore, but then for him to recover in between, in weeks, right? Every week.
So what's like a 4 day a week split kind of look like right now?
Monday, coming off of a 2 day rest, is a heavy day. So we'll do like both movements pretty heavy, whether it's like singles, doubles, complex, whatever it is. And then we'll do probably like a heavy squat. The next day, powers, a little bit lighter, maybe like a pull, and then accessories and all that good stuff.
So then Wednesday's his rest day. One of the reasons we also went to 4 days a week was because he was doing boxing on Wednesdays. So that was like his, active recovery. Cardio wise, it was great. It helped with his, like I said, recovery in between his sets. He felt like he was recovering better overall from, heavier workouts. We're doing complexes on Thursdays, upper body accessories, and strength movements. And then Fridays are right now dedicated to just heavy pulls and heavy leg accessories.
Interesting. This is actually kind of similar to an approach that it's like almost a blend of kind of like a Pendlay style approach with a little bit more of like a high-low method, like Calvin talks about every now and then.
So and it really just depends. I'll switch some things up as we get closer to competitions, right? On a few of the things, but right now, because we have so much time between his next competition, we are kind of just trying to put on some body weight and build some muscle. So a lot of volume, a lot of high reps, which nobody likes when it comes to weightlifting because it's cardio. So that's where we're kind of at right now, and we're probably going to have like a 3-part cycle leading up into I think a special session at Nationals that hasn't been announced yet, but
we'll make sure that we don't broadcast this to everybody. So then I'm curious to know, like, your you are doing some sort of phasic structure to your training right now. You're in a little bit more of a volume cycle. I'm assuming that sounds like you're trying to fill out a weight class. What weight class are you guys planning on competing in?
We're gonna go to 85.
What influenced that decision? How'd you guys come to that conclusion?
I can't make 75. That's pretty much it.
What do you normally weigh at to like cut down to 79 right now?
So when I was 79, like before Pan Ams and Worlds, I was around 81, 82. That's like actively trying to maintain weight because I'm not a very like naturally big person. When I cut down to 79, I feel pretty pretty lean. I don't know how much. I don't think I could go at another 4 kilos. Else I would be super skinny. And I'm just tired of being the skinniest one.
So with that higher weight class, are you guys expecting to put up some bigger numbers? Is that something that you guys are like trying to plan attempts out that far? Or are you guys still waiting to see?
I mean, we're definitely planning to hit some bigger numbers. I mean, I want to be around 65, 215 if possible.
In order for him to be competitive and really kind of like stand out and make a mark, he's gonna. I mean, 65 at a minimum, if I'm being honest, and he knows that too, right? Because we already got these 79s are putting up 65, or a couple of them anyway, right? And then, I think with his massive freaking clean and jerk, I think, 215 really kind of makes up a few kilo difference in the snatch that, if he's hitting 65, 68, and somebody's hitting 70 at 85, but they're only clean and jerking right around 200. If he's putting up 210 plus, he'll make up a couple kilos difference on a snatch, so.
And 6 extra kilos in body weight is especially with for like a clean and jerk specialist really can make a big difference there. We know you took a crack at, what was it, 204, right? Have you guys shared any, like, have you hit that number in training? Have you hit some big lifts in training up to this point?
I've done 200 like multiple times. Like I could pretty much do it.
Yeah,
any day
he's
of the week.
consistent at 200 right now. Like on a given day, a week, at least once a week, maybe twice a week, he could put up a 200 clean and jerk.
I don't know. Right now, I just don't want to. We're not.
Taking any chances.
Yeah, we're not like in a rush to max out. So it's really just about getting as strong as possible. So squats and pulls and staying healthy, getting the wrist better, gaining weight is really the goal right now.
Tired of programming that doesn't work? Inconsistent technique, missing lifts, or going months without PRs is all signs that your program isn't working. If this is you, I'd like you to consider joining the OlyStrong team, my online weightlifting program available in 3, 4, and 5 days a week for weightlifters looking to dial in their technique, get strong, and most importantly, set PRs. Each week is structured to support the things all weightlifters need. Enough practice in the snatch and clean and jerk to dial in your technique, a consistent strength program to build big squats, pulls, and presses, and accessory work carefully chosen to build muscle that supports your Olympic lifts. The program uses logical progressions that focus on building momentum each week instead of just maxing out every week, or worse, only lifting light to work on your technique. If this sounds like something you need, then scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below for a free week trial today. All right, back to the show.
What are your strength numbers looking like?
Dude, I'm not a strong guy. Like before, I'd say like before this year, my front squat was literally my clean. Like right now, or before Worlds, it was 220 front squat, 251 back squat, about the same deadlift, like 250. I don't really max out deadlift. There's no point. Yeah, and then presses maybe like, I don't know, I've never really maxed out a strict press. I'd say maybe like 90.
90 for a press? That's pretty good.
That's generous. Maybe like 85.
Okay, there you go. And so it sounds like you guys are like really prioritizing strength right now. Are there metrics that you guys are like, are there goals that you've got for each of these strength lifts that you want to see before you try and push those, 205, 210, 215 clean and jerks?
Yeah, we want to, between 280, 300 is where we'd like his back squat to be.
What the fuck?
Right? I mean, that's where I'd like his back squat to be. 280's, more realistic, obviously. And then we'd like his front squat to be closer to like 250, 240, 245. Like I said, his deadlift isn't the greatest, but if we could have him pull in closer to 300, that would be great. Right. But it's a chore, right? These are numbers I have in my head, but also these are numbers that in my head, if he's not hitting those by the time we go to the Olympics, how are we going to get our lifts where 215, if you're only deadlifting like 250, but you're clean in 215, right? The percentages they don't make sense, right? So I would like those, especially on his deadlifts, to be a little bit higher so he can start pulling more weight off the ground.
I love how much Caden is finding out about his training right now.
Yeah, that's because I write all of his and I leave him in the dark.
That's funny. So on the topic of deadlifting, it's kind of interesting. It seems like it's a contentious topic between weightlifters where we see some people say that deadlifting is useless and because it's such a slow movement, it has no carryover. And then we talk to somebody else and they'll say like, yeah, but if it's heavy off the floor, it's heavy off the floor. Why wouldn't you deadlift? Have you guys always had deadlifting as kind of a key part of your guys' training, or is that something that's a new addition?
We should rephrase, not deadlift, like pulls.
I mean, like a clean deadlift, right? Or I mean, are you giving it like some yank at the top?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, treat it like a lift, I guess.
Yeah. So is that something that has? I'm assuming then that's something that's always been a little bit of a part of your guys' training.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's always had pulls, right? He's always had pulls, just the heavier pulls. We've done banded pulls from the floor. We've done, things like that. It's just, Yeah, just I don't know his hamstrings. Like in order for us to meet, really kind of get that number up to where I'd like it, we have 2.5 years, right, to get those numbers up to where we kind of I think we're going to need them to be in order for his lifts to be where they need to be as well.
In your mind, does 2.5 years sound like a long time or not a lot of time?
If you would have asked me that question when the last quad started, I would have told you that 2.5 years is a really long time. Before he made his senior team, right, from the Arnold a couple of years ago. If you would have said, hey, does 2.5 years sound like a really long time, we would have told you yes. But I'll tell you now, getting ready for the Olympics, getting ready for the quad, it almost seems like we just finished and we're already back into thinking about what do we need to do, right? So 2.5 years now does not seem like a long time.
What about you, Caden?
I would say
From an athlete perspective.
2.5 years does sound like a long time. Like I feel like I could put on a lot of weight physically and on my total in 2.5 years. But I mean, you really need it way sooner than that, you know? Like the quad is
Demanding.
starts in a year. We start in October for Worlds in China is the first. I think that's the first quad event. So it really starts there. And depending on the selection procedure, you don't want to fall behind if they do like a Roby type of selection procedure again. If it's like last year where it's just heaviest totals go, I kind of would prefer that because it would give me more time to build into the 85 and like mature, I guess.
That makes sense. And that's something that I've noticed over, I mean, I'm not that old, but as I've gotten older, I have found that years seem to fly by a lot faster. And so now when somebody's like, yeah, we got a whole year to get ready, I'm like, oh my God, that's not that much time. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's something I've noticed as well. I'm curious to know, what are the things that you guys are looking at with your technique? What are the mistakes that you're making that you feel like you need to kind of be working on? Because you mentioned earlier that that's something that is always at the forefront. There's always something to be improved. At your level, what are the things that you guys are looking at improving?
Kind of like the second or third pull, just staying in your legs longer.
In his snatches specifically,
Yeah.
right? Right. Anybody that's seen Caden and watched Caden knows that, like, you said it earlier, he's a clean and jerk specialist, right? So, like, we would like to be more in the hunt with his snatches, right? Because, we can make up some ground. So if we can get his snatches on par with the top three in the weight class, right? Once it comes down to that clean and jerk, man, like it's going to be fun to watch, right? But so that's been a big thing that we've actually been focusing on for quite a while before Pan Am's, and even now we're really trying to dial in his snatches and get them to be like as perfect as possible.
Is there any like technique primers or variations that Caden uses that you've seen a lot of progress with?
Specific?
I mean, I like fulls just to like get it in. We do hangs and blocks sometimes, especially in the next cycle. We're doing a lot of blocks and hangs. We've pretty much tried a lot, like halting, pause, stuff like that.
Usually as we get closer to comps, I throw high pulls into his movements.
Like before the lift?
Yep.
So when you guys are looking at approaching, like a technique change or a technique improvement, are you guys looking at that as like, we need to practice the lifts more, we need to try different variations that seem to help with that, we need to focus on cueing and coaching? Or are you guys more like addressing this from a strength perspective and an accessories perspective? Because I'm always kind of curious how, technique improvement changes as lifters advance. I can't imagine that at your level, like you just need to do like more like barbell primers or drills or something like that, and it's more like getting more volume in with the lifts, or is it more on the strength emphasis side of things?
It's all of it, all of the above, right? So like kind of what I told you, brought up a minute ago, where I said we're going to have probably a 3-part cycle. So each part of that cycle is going to be a different focus. So just from a strength and conditioning coaching perspective, right? We all know that we have our GPP, we have our SPP, and then we have our, comp prep, right? So right now we're kind of in that GPP phase where we're kind of trying to dial in or reset maybe some bad habits that we have right now, with the power stuff specifically, the block stuff specifically, trying to fix some of those, that second, third pull in the snatch from a high block perspective, from a high block position. Hangs specifically, complexes specifically, just to reinforce the movements right now, and then a lot of heavy stuff just to put some strength and some size on him right now. And then I'll just relook at it for the next cycle to see how we can get more sport specific as far as, and then continue to gain strength.
So I kind of hear like some of those like Bondarchuk like type terms, like the GPP, SPP. Like, is there anybody that you draw a lot of programming and coaching philosophy from? Like, who are your main influences, you think?
If I'm being quite honest, no one. Now, what I will say is when I first started, coaching and bringing him up, I would look at programming from multiple coaches. I would look at, Catalyst. I would look at Garage Strength. I would look at Cal Strength. I would look at a lot of those different, even stuff from Max Aida. I would look at them and I would, not copy, but I would write a program similar to what they had, but I knew that would be basically focused on what Caden needed to work on. So the same idea, concept. And then just over the years, I feel like I've kind of evolved in programming to where it's more specific to even like him. And then I have, another girl that's on Team USA. So like, and then all of our programming has just gotten better. So to answer your question, Calvin, I've never really looked up to or looked at specific programming templates or anything like that. I've just gone off of my college degrees, what I've learned in exercise science, what I've learned in, sports medicine, what I've learned in physical therapy and kinesiology about the body and how it works and how it moves and what works with what. And I've just taken all that and I've applied it to everybody's programming.
Yeah, a lot of coaches kind of have like, I'd say it's pretty common to have like that story of, I moved out to this, location and learned from this coach. But I think those days are kind of passing as time goes on and information becomes so accessible, like, and also just, having a really great gym to experiment with a lot of athletes to like apply these things to. I know we were talking on an episode with Travis Cooper about how, Penley built a lot of his philosophy on one junior lifter that he had for a really long time, watching them develop throughout that entire period, getting to see what works over a long period of time in real time. So it's probably pretty special to, be so close.
Yeah, I mean, that would be pretty accurate with Caden. I think that where I've learned a lot of my programming was with early programming was bringing him up and seeing what worked for him. Obviously it's not going to work for everybody, but if, you kind of have a generalized concept, it works for most and you just know how to coach it individually.
Makes a lot of sense.
I'm curious, Chad, how did you get into the sport? CrossFit? When was this?
2012. No, 2012.
2012.
Yeah, so I was 18 years into my naval career, and I just got stationed out here in Florida, up in Mayport specifically, and I walked out they got a gym that's kind of right on the beach, and they had, like a TRX station out there, and so I would go out and I would do some TRX workouts, and then I would go down to the beach and do like a 2-mile run and then come back. And I was out there one day setting up my TRX, and I saw the coach, pulling some rowers and barbells and bumper plates out of a Connex box. And I'm like, what are you doing, bro? Like, what you got? He's like, yeah, I'm setting up for a class. So I told him I wanted to try it. So that's kind of where it started. And then we found a gym that was close to our house at the time because I did really, really like CrossFit. And the ex-wife had a job in the afternoons where she couldn't. So I'd have to pick Caden up from school, and then I'd just take him straight to the gym with me. And he would just watch. He would watch, and after I got done, he's like, Dad, can I try this? Can I try that? So I have videos of Caden when he was 8 years old. First time he ever touched a set of rings, and he did like 3 strict ring muscle ups, or mostly strict, like minimal kip, within like an hour of him practicing, right? And it was kind of the same thing. Like he did bar muscle ups, similar. Like I showed him how to do bar muscle ups. Got him a box. He would jump up on the box. He would practice his kips, and then before you know it, he's doing like 3 bar muscle ups, stringing them together.
So when did things switch from CrossFit to weightlifting? When did you start making that jump?
We kind of went from CrossFit to weightlifting after I had got hired as a head coach at another gym. And actually I'd left that gym and I'd went to another gym and I was kind of coaching there, and they said I could start up a barbell club. And so that's when I started really just specifically teaching, just working with him for a while. I would work with some other athletes, but I specifically worked with him. And then from there, it just kind of started picking up.
And at what point did you, and maybe Caden has a better answer for this, but like at what point did you go, I think I might be like really good at this weightlifting thing? Like when did it start going like, I should maybe take this pretty seriously?
Probably like middle school, maybe like seventh or eighth grade.
Yeah.
Cause I was playing football at the time, and I think we made our first like junior or youth or junior team. And we were like, oh shit, we're on Team USA. Let's not get hurt playing football. That's kind of like when I stopped taking it, or that's when I started taking it more seriously.
Were the Olympics kind of always an end goal, or is that something that only more recently you started to maybe seriously consider?
I mean, it's always, you always have a goal of going to the Olympics or the NFL or the NBA. But before the last quad, when we went to the Arnold for last chance qualifiers, that's really when it hit me, like I have to beat this person, and then we're in the quad, and then you literally could qualify for the Olympics. So that's when I noticed like that was different.
I kind of want to talk about it. There's a little bit of some controversy in the weightlifting world right now, at least at the time that this is coming out. This will be weeks old news. There was recently a video with Gabriel Sinclair and Clarence Kennedy, who your name got brought up a little bit. They said that you're one of their favorite lifters, but then kind of followed that up with almost immediately saying that they kind of think everybody on Team USA is on drugs.
Yeah. I mean, I take it as a compliment. Like that's awesome,
It's one of the biggest compliments in the world.
Yeah, because like also, I literally don't look like I'm on steroids whatsoever. Like I'm always the smallest and skinniest one. Like how are you gonna say I'm on steroids? And then the argument was that we just we got too good too quick. And I mean, I've been doing this for 13 years. I don't understand how I came up too quick,
Well, and so that's Brian, that's going back to what you were saying before, is like when you started this off, is like people have not paid attention to Caden, but he's kind of been he's been kind of, in the background. Even to this day, I feel like some of the attention is going to, or not. We'll put it this way: Caden's not getting the attention and the credit that he's worked his butt off for since he was 9 years old. But that being said, I mean, it is what it is. It happened. But all I'm saying is, you know, Caden's been busting his butt. He's been out here, you know, doing what he needs to do, and he's been doing it, you know, cleanly. And he's just been doing it for years. So it's not out of the blue. It's not out of nowhere. It's not a miraculous, oh, you know, all of a sudden he's getting strong. No, it's that linear progression since he was 9 years old that is continuing to work for him. So
Yeah, I've also gone up like weight classes pretty often, like 73, 79, now 85. So, I mean, if I don't, you know, put on snatch and clean and jerk weight, then you just kind of suck.
Yeah, and I mean, it also kind of happened like where the jumps that you made happened at very reasonable times. When somebody like makes that transition from youth to junior, you start to see a pretty big increase in their lifts. When somebody makes that junior to senior, you start to see a pretty big increase in their lifts. So it's not anything that's like crazy, and it also wasn't big increases. It was just like very reasonable increases that happen at those periods of time in your life, you know?
I think it's really hard sometimes for like people in other countries or cultures to understand what like American culture is like too, and just like how big sports are here, and just how different they are compared to maybe some other countries like say Romania. And we were talking about this a little earlier, me and Brian, but like, the population of say Romania is just so tiny, and think about maybe even just like the number of people like doing the movements of snatch or clean and jerk, even through CrossFit, that kind of thing. It's just astronomically smaller than the United States. Like, and I think exactly what we're seeing, we look at Olivia, Hampton, Caden, you guys are all, people that got involved somehow through that like CrossFit boom of the early 2010s. Um, and then you were at a very young, great age to start weightlifting, and all of you guys just kept doing it like really intensely through that whole time. Um, so I don't think it's not like any surprise to someone who understands that, but I guess like, just putting that in the cultural context, it's probably like, no, you could never do that in Romania or whatever. I bet like it's like impossible. And obviously a guy like Gabriel, you know, did get popped. That was the way he did it, to hit, some really high numbers. But yeah.
I mean, but not just Caden though. Like these kids have been training for a while. Caden and Hampton used to be. They would go head to head at almost every national competition.
We never competed
Not against. Well, sorry, not against each other, but they're in different weight classes. But they were typically in the same session, right? There was another kid, Hutch Friend, which was.
I compete against Hutch.
Right.
I've never competed against Hampton.
Right. You guys have been in the same session. Yes, you have. Yes. Trust me.
No, because
Anyway.
I think the first time I saw him was when I broke my hand, and
You, Hutch, and
at it.
Hamp were in a session at a in Vegas, and Hamp was sharing his baggie full of gummies with you, because it was you and Hutch on one platform, warm up platform, and Hamp was on the next one. You were in the same session. I'll pull it up. 100%.
Maybe we were in the back together.
No,
I don't
you're
think
in the
we're on
same
the.
side.
I don't think
You're
we're on the
platform.
same
You were
platform.
on. Yes, you were.
I don't think so.
We talked to Trip. We'll have to fit.
Yeah, we'll have to
We'll
talk to
pull
Trip.
this. We'll Trip will correct us if I'm wrong, but I doubt it.
Hobby weightlifters and competitors training might seem the same, but there's one big difference. Competitors need to hit their best lifts on the competition platform. It doesn't matter what you did in training if you can't perform when it counts, and your program should reflect that. Instead of following random programming, maxing out all the time, and hoping for the best on game day, our Competition Strong Team program focuses on long-term progressions that set you up to have your best competition day yet. Each training cycle is carefully designed around the USA Weightlifting National Circuit, so you'll hit your biggest lifts at the Arnold, the American Open Series 2, and of course, the National Championships. If you're ready to take your training to the next level and get platform ready, then click the link in the description below or scan the QR code on the screen for a free week trial today. All right, back to the show.
I'm not sure that a lot of people like realize what's going on with the new like national team program, or like what what's really like a part of that. Like I know there's maybe like a lot of resources like dietitian or like sports psychologist or something like that. And then I even like when I first read through the document, it's like some of it's like required or you get kicked off, maybe something like that. But why don't you clarify some of that, like about what what resources you get on the national team, and what those look like?
Yeah, so you do. Yeah, you get sports nutrition. You get the doctor, and then the psychologist. Yeah. Um, so you can use them if you want to. It all depends on your level too. I think like bronze gets it like
Developmental get it once a month.
yeah once a month, and then silver gets it maybe like twice.
I think that's right. And then I think that your guys' level gets it like weekly or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, and then gold and silver. I don't really know what like silver, bronze, and developmental get because
For what?
like um
Stipend?
no
Or just
like reimbursements and stuff because gold gets like 2,500 a quarter
Yeah.
for reimbursements, which I've been using on meal prep, recovery, stuff like that. Um, I want to say silver gets like 1,000 or 1,500.
I mean, roughly kind of what happens is the gold gets at a certain level and then it's like cut in half for silver. And then bronze and developmental are kind of almost on the same level as far as like what they're allowed, what they get.
They don't get anything besides
Yeah.
like the
Then
nutrition.
the other thing is they get, when they're doing training camps now, which is I think is really cool at the OTC, right? They'll set up specific camps for specific levels. So that's a new thing that I think is pretty cool that USAW came out with. It really creates a cohesive team training environment.
Yeah, that's got to be an interesting, like almost difficulty in the approach here that we have in the United States, where we don't really have like cohesive teams in a way, where we're not training together all the time, and so it oftentimes leads to like one athlete or two athletes being really good in their gym, but not really having anybody that they can train with or push them to be like really, really good. So I think it's great to get these athletes all together. What does a typical camp look like for you guys?
Yeah, yeah. You wake up, you eat, you take a nap, you eat again, you sleep, or no, you lift, then you eat again, and then recover. The training center, the Olympic Training Center, was really cool though. They had DEXA scan, hot cold bath. The dining hall was sick. Pretty much everything you need to like,
Be an athlete.
yeah, to be an athlete.
And that's everything that an athlete wants too. Like it's so nice to just have all your needs taken care of.
You just want to train, you want to eat, you want to sleep, you want to recover. That's it, right? And you want to hang out with your boys. But yeah, you're right. It's Caden numerous times during training before this stuff started happening is like, I'd like to go down to train with. He went out to Medina down in Miami one weekend, and then there's been other times where we've talked about trying to get people to come into the gym because he does need that push. So I do really appreciate what USAW has done with setting up these training camps and allowing him to, train with us here at home and do his stuff. But then, once, for 1 week, a couple times a year, go out to the Olympic Training Center, and then he still does my training. He still does my programming. The athletes still do their personal coaches programming while they're out there for the most part, unless there's specific movements that they want them to do. Otherwise,
It seems like every time that they go, they make a show or they're doing a lot of research on you guys. This is what it seems like. They're breaking out, foot pressure stuff. They're breaking out force plates. They're breaking out bar path analysis. Is this something that they're collecting data on to help guide your guys' training, or is it still in the early phases where it seems like they're doing a lot more collecting and you guys aren't getting much of that yet?
they do. So we have meetings as well. Every level has a certain amount of meetings that you can have with like Mike and Sean and Jackie and all them, and they'll show us all the stuff we want to know about your force and your bar path and all that stuff. So yeah, we do get it.
the Team USA, there's an exercise science guy. He collects all the data, And then once he's collected it, he'll go over it with Coach Mike. And then they'll send us an email with his videos. So when he went to the training camp, I got all of his analytics. I got all of his data. I got everything in an email. And then we set up an online phone call to go over all of that stuff. And then they did it again after Worlds. I got an email here a few weeks ago that had a breakdown of Caden's biggest lifts, I think 150, 155. And it breaks it down in this cool little so it goes over all the data. So yeah, essentially answer your question. I take all of that and I apply it to his programming, right? What do we need to work on? Where are we? One of the things, I'm going to brag on Caden a little bit, after his training week at the Olympic Training Center, when the results and everything came back from the sports med guys or exercise science guys, like they were saying, they were complimenting on his technique, as far as like how consistent it is between lifts, heavier lifts, lighter lifts, where the force is at, direction of the bar, all that good stuff. Like, and so they complimented him on, like, he's, out of all the Team USA athletes, as far as consistency goes, power to weight ratio, all that good stuff, he's probably one of the top. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's really, really cool, nerdy stuff.
What is can you give us an example of one thing that you've made a change in based on the data that they've collected?
Yeah, essentially it was his first pull from the floor was missing some force, and I think we were a little forward loaded on some of his stuff in his first pull. So after the video analytics and everything, I took a step back going into Norway, and I really developed. We did a lot of floating movements, right, to work on his balance and his pressure in his feet for his lifts before we went out. And a lot of that was based off of a conversation and meeting that we had with Coach Mike and Christoph and Caden and myself. So yeah.
So when you guys are doing these floating movements, especially with like the goal of trying to increase that force, are you guys lowering down all the way to the ground and then stopping, or are you guys kind of doing almost like an impulse where you're trying to get a little bit of a reflex there?
I'm actually, typically for him, I'd like to see, like, he was doing a pull from the ground, and then he would come down and do a floating pull, and then he would come down and do like the floating movement, or he would just do the floating movement after the pull. Typically I wanted him to kind of come down and pause right off the floor so he can feel that balance and we can keep that tension, but and still get that time under tension effect with the lift to train his body to move the right way and with that muscle memory. So
were there any other variations or things like this that you guys have found to be really helpful for Caden specifically?
Not really. He takes to things pretty well. Like if there's something that we're specifically working on, he usually picks it up pretty well. There for a while, we had a problem with his feet shifting a little bit, coming off the ground, which you see that in quite a few athletes actually. So it's just been one of those things where we really had to focus on keeping the pressure of his feet through the floor or in the floor, right?
It wasn't off the ground.
It's after the knee.
After the knee.
After the knee. It's just when he comes after the knee, he's a little light in the heel and he's a little heavy in the toe. So his feet would kind of just turn a little bit on his drive. We've had to try to make an adjustment to that, but that's an anatomical kind of body thing. Sometimes you can or can't correct over time. So it just depends.
If you had to, I know we're getting a little close on time. So if you had to say any one piece of advice for a lifter who looks up to Caden, wants to try and make an Olympic team or wants to compete at a high level like this, especially here in Florida, we've got a lot of high school lifters. What piece of advice would you give to a young high school lifter who loves weightlifting, wants to compete at that level, but it just seems like it's such a far reach.
I'll answer it honestly first. Well, you don't have to put it in or not. Sometimes you have it and sometimes you don't. You know, like I do feel like it's a lot of people's genetics. Like some people you can grind as much as possible and you're still not gonna, like, it sucks. It sucks, but it is what it is. Like, you know, an animal in the wilderness is born how it's born, you know. You're born a lion, you're gonna be a lion. You're born I don't know, a fox, you're gonna be a fox. You know, like you can't change it. I mean, you can work as hard as you want, but yeah, you can't change it. As far as what people should know, I guess it'd just be like take care of your body, recover, and then mentality is probably one of the biggest things. I know. I feel like you should go into like every lift, like, oh, you know, like smash this, you know.
It's kind of it is a hard message to give because like I get a lot of kids talking to me, or especially when we do recruiting for Lindenwood, they're always like, "Oh, you know, I want to go to the Olympics," and I'm like, you know, like you're 18 years old and you're snatching 85, you're snatching like body weight or something. Like it's like how do you deliver? How do you know you don't tell someone, you know, hey, you either got it or you don't.
Here's what I've found, from a coach's perspective. From an athlete's perspective, I agree with Caden. There's just, you know, you work your ass off regardless of what level of an athlete you are to try to be the best athlete that you can, right? And some people, regardless of how hard they work, unfortunately just fall short, right? I mean, how many D1 football players don't make it to the to pros, right? How many D2, you know, athletes don't make it D1, right? And it's just, but you could be really, really good and you could absolutely dominate, but you just didn't make it. So there's that aspect, but then there's also from a coach's perspective is like, and I think what a lot of athletes don't realize, this is not an overnight thing. Weightlifting and adaptations and your strength and how your body has to develop over the years at being able to hold the weights that some of these athletes hold, right? The core strength, the tensile strength in your muscles. Like there's just so much nerdy stuff that could go into this that we don't, it'll get confused and lost in translation with these younger kids. But I think the bottom line is there's no easy solution, and there's no, you're not going to just join a team 1 year just because they have a Team USA athlete in the mix and you're going to make Team USA. It's just not going to happen, right? It's there. Every coach in their whole life, at some point, if you're any type of coach with, you know, any type of respect, wants an athlete of that caliber. And we do everything that we can to, in our careers, to try to develop somebody of that nature, right? And sometimes we get lucky and sometimes we don't. But the bottom line is like, regardless of whether you're a coach or an athlete, this is going to take time. And these athletes don't just make it on the Olympic stage without putting in the reps and without putting in the time on the platform. It just doesn't happen. So just be patient.
It is one of the toughest conversations in weightlifting. And I'm actually really glad that you said that, Caden, because I feel like a lot of people don't talk about that. Where if you want to make the Olympics, you've got to be a freak athlete, genetically gifted, and you have to work hard, and you have to put in the time and the reps, and you have to train smart and hard. It's one of those things where, like, I think every coach has probably experienced this at some point where, you know, an athlete's like, how do I get really good? Like, I want to be really good. And you're just like, dude, I mean, like, you can't, like, you barely can squat to death, like, without a bar. Like, this is going to be, I'm never going to say somebody can't do something. I'm never going to say that. But there are athletes who are, and that's it. All you have control over is what you have control over, right? And that's putting in the work. But there are very certainly athletes who just can put in all that work and will never go to the Olympics. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile pursuit.
I've seen a lot of young kids, like youth athletes, even junior athletes that were really good. But they're just not senior level.
Thing about it is, it's a recipe, man. It's a recipe. It's a recipe between the athlete, the coach, the programming, everything. It's a recipe. If you're making lasagna and you forget to add the ricotta cheese, right? That's like it's not going to be a good freaking lasagna. Right? So if I'm, trying to make it easy for people to understand, like it's a recipe, and it's not a recipe that happens in a month or even a year. This is a recipe that takes time to develop. Like you said, you might be a youth athlete and you just might be a phenomenal youth athlete and make a youth team, but then you go into juniors and you realize that going into juniors, it's like, holy cow, it's a whole nother level. And then even after that, seniors is another level above that. And at each level, it gets harder and harder. So you might make your youth team as, early on in your youth career, but then, here you are as a senior and you're still fighting to hit the minimum B standard. So it's tough, man. It's not an easy sport. Professionals are professionals for a reason.
And so anybody who is listening, hopefully this isn't disheartening to anybody, but like it also shouldn't change your plans, right? Like I don't think you have to do weightlifting to go to you don't have to go to the Olympics for that to be a reason to do weightlifting. And that's the important takeaway is like it's not the only reason to do this. And a lot of the time I think it's also a misguided reason for a lot of young athletes. They almost say that weightlifting is so hard, I have to have some sort of worthwhile goal at the end. Like I have to have an Olympics in my brain. Otherwise, what was all this for? And it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can have your own personal goals and you can make the goal just to see what you're physically capable of. And that is just as worthwhile of a goal as the end result being going to the Olympics, even if the outcome isn't as flashy as you may want it to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say as long as it's taken me to get where I am, like I don't know, like it would take so much for a new person to like stick through it to see where their potential actually is, because like it's been 12 years and I still don't think I'm at mine, so it's really just about sticking through it and keeping your body healthy and your brain healthy.
Yeah, like do weightlifting for 10 years and then come back and talk to us again when you ask how to get good.
Okay, and I think we'll go ahead and wrap there. So thank you guys so much for doing this. Real quick, Calvin, where can people find you?
At Calvin Lackey, 81 kg on everything.
And Caden, where can people find you?
My first and last name on Instagram.
There you go, Caden Cahoy. What about you, Chad?
You can find our gym page at Jacksonville Strength on Instagram. You can find my coaching or my personal page at Coach Chips on Instagram. And then I believe it's at Coach Chips on Facebook as well.
And let's not forget Coach Chips on TikTok, dude. You're killing it over there.
I mean, it's not there's nothing to brag about there. I think I've got one video there, and there's pretty lackluster. So, I mean, you see Caden's face. I'm not a social media guy.
That's all right. Well, you've got the face for it for sure. So, and for anybody who's in the area, Jacksonville Strength, go check them out. And reach out for coaching and programming, and you'll probably become an Olympian like Caden as well. So, yeah, thank you guys. You guys can find me at Big Ben Strength on everywhere. We'll catch you guys next week. Bye.
If you found this video helpful, then make sure to check out this video here or this episode of the Last Set, Best Set podcast.